Welcome to the Mental Health Advocacy Series. We're back with another great conversation this week. The focus of this series is mental health and the Black community. With this series, it's our desire to share information with the community on topics such as understanding what mental health is, myths and stigmas about mental health, generational trauma, therapy, and other resources. Today's topic is therapy and beyond. I'm Olivia Wilson, and I serve as the Trauma-Informed Parent Engagement Coordinator with Greater Richmond SCAN, and I'm joined by my colleague, Tamika Daniel, who is the Behavioral Health Community Organizer with Greater Richmond SCAN. Tamika is an Easton community resident and mother to 4 children. She began advocating for the needs of her son who has autism, which led to her advocating on a larger scale in the 10 years of not being employed. She began as SCAN's Behavioral Health Community Organizer in August 2019 through a partnership with Richmond Memorial Health Foundation. Utilizing her expertise and experience, she brings SCAN's work in adverse childhood experiences, trauma and resilience to the community through training and forums. She also assists in building resilience and facilitating healing through empowerment and connection through a trauma-informed and equity lens. Additionally, she brings her voice and advocacy to meetings and tables throughout the community. We also have the pleasure to introduce our special guest, Monique Simpson. Monique is a licensed clinical social worker from Newport News, Virginia. She created Emory Center for Counseling and Wellness to assist with healing from trauma and managing an array of life transitions during the journey of self-discovery. Ms. Simpson believes in empowering others to acknowledge and accept feelings associated with trauma, anxiety, depression, conflict, communication barriers, relationships, occupational goals, and self-esteem, to list a few. Ms. Simpson completed her Bachelor's of Social Work at Norfolk State University. She began her career in social work in 2010 in case management before pursuing her clinical training in 2011 at Norfolk State University, where she received her Master's of Social Work. She began serving children and adults in a variety of settings ranging from offices, schools, family residences, and residential facilities. She has assisted people who seek treatment for depression, anxiety, trauma, anger, stress, relationships, conflict, again, occupational goals, behavioral issues, ADHD, postpartum, and general life transitions. So Ms. Simpson approaches issues from a strength-based perspective and utilizes techniques from evidence-based modalities to assist clients in reaching goals. Ms. Simpson seeks to teach skills you will use to improve quality of your rediscovered self and make realistic changes that will last. So we have the absolute best person on here for today for this conversation. So Monique, Tamika, and myself, we will be talking about therapy, the therapy process, and even other ways to support mental health beyond the couch, as we often hear in our society today. So let's jump right in. I think it is probably best to really kind of start from the basics. And Monique, we would love to start with you kind of just offering just a description or explanation of what is therapy.
Okay, so therapy in medical terms is a practice that helps individuals manage problematic behaviors, feelings, beliefs. What I would say is therapy is more of a place where you can get some unbiased, evidence-based treatment based on the things that you are currently experiencing, as well as working through some things that happened during childhood. It's a space where you can learn techniques and tools to help manage everyday life, especially when it comes to behavior issues or thought patterns you're not really aware of where they come from, beliefs that you have that you're not sure how you develop them or how they interfere with your everyday life, to kind of help you be more productive when managing unwanted thoughts or behaviors and feelings and beliefs.
Thank you so much for that, Monique. I think that was really, really helpful in the way that you broke that down for us, especially as we know that we have really entered into an era where therapy is becoming less taboo, right? Especially when, because we're talking about mental health in the Black community. And so we see even in social, with the help of social media, we have many more advocates, even from our celebrities, for families and friends now, and just really loving the heightened awareness about therapy, where people just simply saying go to therapy, but at the same time, we don't all know what therapy is. And so I really appreciate you offering that explanation. Tamika, in your experience, like how would you describe therapy? What is therapy to you?
For me, therapy was an outlet. Like Monique said, it was that unbiased outlet for me. It gave me a lot of coping skills to deal with everyday life. Like I probably said a million times on this series, I wasn't depressed or any of that. I didn't suffer from anxiety. I was just having trouble struggling with coping with, everyday life. And, why am I making some of the decisions that's causing me to end up in the same predicament over and over and over again? So for me, it was that positive outlet, that unbiased one. It gave me that mirror that I needed, that I probably wouldn't get necessarily from, my friends or family and things of that nature. So that's what it was for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Tamika. I also think about kind of looking at our next question, even as therapy, right, is becoming well more accepted and we're learning more about it, we know that there may still be some misconceptions about therapy that still lingers. And I want to pull on you, Monique, to maybe ask, in your experience, the years you've been in clinical practice, what are some of those misconceptions we still have about therapy?
Well, the favorite misconception, especially in the Black community, is I'm not going to therapy. I'm not crazy. Therapy is for crazy people. Or why would I open up to a stranger about the issues that I'm experiencing? And don't let that baby boomer generation know that you want to go to therapy. You don't need a therapist. Talk to God. Send up prayer. Get on your knees and pray. And I know that social media is very heavily influenced in our community population now. And I know that there's this popular meme that I see going around that is something, don't quote me, but it says something like, I'm gonna seek God and therapy. Because they're both, you need both. And then that's, religion is a belief. So there's some people who don't necessarily believe. And so a lot of times therapy is based on what you see in a movie where you land on a couch, and it's not with a person of our skin color who's trying to help you through socioeconomic problems that they can't even relate to. So that's the biggest thing that I've run into prior to it being, as you mentioned, more of, and I when I first started on social media, I will always say, I hope this isn't a trend where individuals see these celebrities endorsing therapy. And now this is a huge trend that everybody has mental health issues and want to seek therapy. And then as soon as someone isn't speaking about it, it stops and it goes back to, I'm not crazy. I don't want to end up in the hospital. I don't want to lay on anybody's couch and speak to a stranger. So that's the biggest misconception that I've always heard before, it was more prevalent on social media and within our community.
Absolutely. And I think that I would definitely have to agree with those misconceptions. Is there any you want to add, Tamika?
Yes, definitely. Piggybacking, and most people that know me know I'm very transparent, so I use a lot of my life experiences. But that was the first thing that I heard when people found out I was going to therapy, and I say, I got therapy. It's, what's wrong with you? It's like, it's automatically thought that something was wrong with me, and nothing was wrong with me. I was perfectly fine. I was just in a space in my life where I wanted different. And I went in there with misconceptions about it because I really thought I was going to go sit in there with a Caucasian therapist and they was not going to understand me and none of that. But I actually got the opposite. My therapist did end up being Black. I think she was younger than me, but she helped me a whole lot in the 3 years that I was receiving therapy. But I definitely was one of them people that went in with those misconceptions, and I had some of them before I even agreed to do therapy. It was always, what goes on in this family stays in the family. You don't tell outsiders about your problems, and ain't nothing wrong with you, and I say it and I say it again. It's always, your ancestors put up with worse, they dealt with worse, like nothing is wrong with you. Pick yourself up and keep going. So for a long time, even though I knew I needed it, I shied away from it because I was scared of what people were going to say about me for going.
Absolutely. And I feel led to even offer some level of transparency too. Like, even as a therapist, I do therapy myself. And I remember when I first made the decision to go to therapy, and even as a therapist and a huge advocate for therapy, I even had to question myself, like, why exactly do I feel like I need therapy? Like, can I do without it? But like you said, it wasn't anything wrong. Like, I didn't have it wasn't a crisis, right? We always think that you have to go to therapy when you're in crisis. But it was like, no, I was at a place in my life where I really felt like I wanted to process and move beyond my thinking than just keeping things inside into myself. And so I really appreciate this conversation and just the real conversation around therapy and those misconceptions, because I think that's really connected to, even when someone does decide to go to therapy, the expectation. And so I think it's great that we're saying go to therapy, but then we also know that not too many people are familiar with the therapy process or truly what to expect. And so my next question for everyone is, and starting with you, Monique, if that's okay, like, what can therapy look like, right? So acknowledging that therapy isn't just this one size fit all, that therapy can look like many things. And we know that it's a broad question, and we want you to be able to answer that however that connects with you. Like, what can therapy look like?
Well, of course, as a therapist, a trained professional, I seek to utilize my skills and, of course, the evidence-based modalities that we learn in school and we practice. But what I definitely focus on the client. So it's a lot of person-centered for me. I start off my intakes, of course, with the script of intake, all those questions of assessment, but I let them know before moving forward and scheduling a follow-up that in order for us to be successful in whatever treatment that the individual is looking for, it's going to require transparency and openness. So come to your sessions with being ready to talk about past, present, future, being able to speak to me in a way that you exactly how you feel, anything other than being disrespectful, of course, but if you need to yell, scream, cuss, definitely do that in your session in order to be able to achieve your best self. Not holding back. A lot of times, some things that you share to a stranger can feel hard or embarrassing, but those are all the things that I need to be able to help you become your best self.
That's wonderful, Monique. Like, when you said that, like, one thing that you mentioned to clients or even potential clients, like, the way that you all will be successful in this journey is that you have to be ready to talk. Like, coming and not being honest won't be helpful. Coming and not really wanting to share or still trying to hide, withhold information won't be helpful. And so coming and knowing that this is a space that truly is safe, and it's your space, right? Like, this is yours. And so you get out what you put in.
And I do make it clear that one thing about me, I'm not going to have mental exhaustion because you just staring at me and you don't have anything to offer. The probing doesn't work, but get you but so far if I'm trying to probe and get things out of you. And so I make it very clear that, like you mentioned, this is your journey and I'm just here to assist along the way. I'm not here to navigate and drive it for you. We're here to figure out what you need along the way. And I can only do that with you giving me the information that I need to be successful to help you.
Absolutely. And there's one thing I want to follow up with you too, Monique. So even when we think about like that therapy can look different based on, again, what the need is, right, of that person who's seeking it, what the treatment model is, even just the style of the clinician, of the therapist, right? The setting could look different, but we also know there's different types of therapies. Mm-hmm. And so did you want to speak to that too? Like that therapy isn't just talk therapy, like there's different types of therapy modalities.
Yeah, so some of the modalities that I use is cognitive behavior therapy, the psychodynamic. I do like to use some of the humanistic. Most of those are really focused on the person, thought patterns, behaviors. And so, if you can control those negative thinking, those unwanted thoughts, and change those negative behaviors, then it'll help you achieve what it is that you want to achieve. And again, there's different modalities that's definitely based on what the person is seeking help for. And so a lot of times, CBT is very helpful, especially when you have all of these circumstances that contribute to the reasons why you are feeling the way you feel, or the reasons why you're seeking therapy the way you is for whatever it is that you want to address. And so a lot of times for me in my practice, I do focus a lot on CBT. That works both depression and anxiety. And humanistic is more so, if you want to grow and be a better version of yourself. So let's focus on some strengths that you have there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This is so helpful. I want to make sure Tamika jumps in here and, offer, even just from your own experience of what have you learned in terms of like, what therapy can look like, even in your own experience.
For me, I think I was more so amazed that it was so many different types, because like I said, when I went in, I had this notion that it was just going to be me sitting and talking. But the more and more I talked to her, and we were uncovering things in my life, like goals I wanted to obtain, and one of those was me learning how to drive. I had a fear of driving, and that's what was holding me back from actually going to pursue getting my license. And my therapist, she ended up telling me that, hey, they have forms of therapy to help you with things of that nature. And she was explaining that the process would look like, me going, to another facility and them possibly, putting me in a vehicle and talking me through my fears and things of that nature. So I was just surprised to know that something like that even existed.
Absolutely. And Tamika, do you recall, did she call that exposure therapy?
Yes, she did. Mm-hmm. She did. Absolutely. Because that's not something that she did, but mm-hmm. She was going to refer me to someone else.
Right. And that's really key. I'm coming back to you, Monique. Even thinking about Tamika's experience, where someone comes to you, right, with a need that, depending on what that situation is, that there can always be coupled, right? Them coming to you can also be coupled with maybe some other type of treatment or practice or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, if it's out of my scope, I would definitely refer out. And so it's really good to be able to have a database of individuals, a resource list of individuals who are experts in different types of practices that, is out of my scope, of course.
Absolutely. I appreciate you all sharing this. It makes me even think about in my own experience too, where I may have a client who's working with me and may need something, like you said, out of my scope, where it allows them to be able to still follow the same course of treatment with them and then have something supplemental, like a a TMS therapy, or maybe EMDR types of therapy, where, you know, there can be some supplements to really help that individual really get their needs met in a holistic way. This is really, really good. So if someone is interested in therapy, or maybe they don't know if therapy is right for them, are there some suggestions? Are there some ways that can really help someone determine if therapy is right for them?
So what I also like to add to my disclaimer when I start with the individual is, at any point you don't feel that this is a match, or you don't feel comfortable to terminate, you know, and I would try my best to help and find a therapist that may be fitting. But you do want to make sure that you, individual seeking therapy, does want to make sure that, you know, after a few sessions or so, you feel like you can trust that person. You feel like the therapist is effective and is helping you in a way, especially with the things that you have brought to therapy to be resolved. And so, of course, you can do that by reading bios, because most therapists have bios, contacting, asking questions. Some therapists even go as far as having reviews on their websites from other clients. So you can read some of those reviews, do some research on best practices for what it is that you are trying to seek therapy for. So those are a few ways. Again, social media is a lot of ways that I find different things, whether it's an event, whether it's a shopping store I'm looking for, those hashtags are definitely there. So social media is a very heavy tool. So that's a way to finding some things in your area, along with Google, our precious Google.
Yes, absolutely. Those were great. Thank you, Monique. Might need you to recite those again for those who are really on the fence, or in the you know, in that space of determining, is therapy right for me? Those were really great. But are there any that helped you, Tamika, that kind of helped you really determine whether therapy was the right decision for you or not?
So for me, and this doesn't apply to everyone, but for me, it was about where I was in my life. So probably like I started in 2018. But prior to that, I want to say probably around 2016, I was referred to a therapist, and that didn't pan out so well. I don't know if we didn't vibe well. And another thing was I wasn't ready to deal with some of the stuff that ended up coming out either. So depending on what you're going for, I would say it depends on the space you're in your life. Like for me, I wanted to know why I kept making some of the decisions that I did pertaining to men, and things of that nature. So I had finally gotten to a space where I was tired. I was fed up, and I was ready to do that hard work, because it was hard work. At one point, I was okay with constantly, you know, being a victim, but then it just got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm contributing something to my own pain, but why? So I would say, depending on the space that you're in your life, like it's hard work. Like I don't lie to people, it's hard work. A mirror will be placed in front of you, and a lot of accountability is going to come in. And for me, that was the only way that therapy worked for me, is because I had to deal with that stuff. I had to sit here and say, look, I knew what was going on, and I still chose to do it anyway. I chose to hurt myself. That's a nasty reality for some of us. And sometimes you don't want to deal with it. And probably like 2 years prior to 2018, I wasn't in a space of wanting to deal with that. So I went to probably about 2 or 3 sessions, and I stopped. And when 2018 came, and I wanted something more for me and my children, I went for 3 years until they discharged me.
Wow. Thank you
And
so
I
much.
can put some of what it's saying, where a person can recognize when they might need to seek professional help is if you get that, it's like she mentioned, if you get that sense of overwhelmingness, you know, constant fatigue, and you don't know why, those intrusive thoughts, apathy, not really caring about anything, like hopelessness. And just as she mentioned, you repeating behaviors and you really want to understand, like, why are you making these decisions, how to beat these patterns, and these things are starting to affect your everyday life, work, if you're in school, relationships. So that's when you need to seek something beyond just talking to a family member or a friend. Really talking to a professional to kind of help you navigate those problems.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for adding that. I think that's really key for, those of us who are listening and that's tuning in, to give us some things to kind of reflect and think about, like, has there been any shifts, or what is not seeming normal, or, how am I functioning different that may seem a little concerning, or a lot of concern, very concerning. And so I really, really appreciate you offering that too. It's given us a lot to think about, and to hopefully do some further assessment of ourselves and what space we're in. There was one thing Tamika mentioned that made me want to ask you, Monique, as the therapist, when you have those clients that come and they don't realize maybe how hard this work is, but they somehow make it on the other side, and they express like, wow, I did this. Like, how does it even for you feel when you have clients kind of share back what their therapeutic experience or process has been like?
So one thing that I do try to make sure throughout the process is just reiterate, that they're the person doing the work. So it was them that I assisted them, but it was them that got there, that got to that point where they're looking back and they're realizing these things. And so it does, of course, make me feel accomplished in my position, but I like to keep the reward on the client, because I always, and I say this often as well, you sit and you talk to me once a week, maybe for about 45 to 50 minutes. But those minutes and days in between is all you. And so you doing the work and you utilizing the things that we discuss here for this short amount of time in between sessions. So actually, I like to give, them their accolades for being able to actually do the work.
Absolutely. And for me, I think that's the beauty, right? In this whole, I love the language that we use of the journey, right? The discovering process, doing the work, because it is a process, right? I often think about sometimes, again, with those misconceptions, or maybe not having the right expectations about there, we think we're going to go and just things going to get fixed. Mm-hmm. And it's not a quick fix, right? It's not a quick fix. Even if it is solution focused or short term, it is typically not a quick fix. And it's hard work. And I love how you empower the people you work with, and like you said, give them the accolades and recognizing that it's them that do the work. That's really beautiful. Even as hard as it is, and I'm going back to a moment of transparency when I had my journey in therapy. It was hard work, but at the end, it's almost like sometimes it was such a great experience. It's like, I want to go back. And I don't really need to go back right now, but I want to go back because I really enjoyed, because of the relationship and the trust that was built with my therapist. Is like, sometimes I feel like I'm trying to find a reason to go back, but that's just I think a testament to the work, again, that I was able to put in, and the appreciation for having, like you said, that great trained professional, that therapist. So I really appreciate all that you are offering. So we're talking about therapy, and how does one determine if therapy is right for them? But let's say they have determined that it's right for them, they're ready to start the process. How do they start? Where do they begin? How do they start the process of seeking a therapist?
And that goes back to what I was saying prior to, there's directories, Google. Again, I know that I haven't personally looked for a therapist with hashtags, but there's social media where you can put in those specific symptoms that you might be experiencing, hashtags for the area that you're in, that can definitely give you some insight on how to find a therapist.
Absolutely. Those are really great I hope that, those of us tuning in, where we got our pen and papers, we're jotting down all of these resources, all of these tips and strategies of ways to go about finding the therapist. Is there anything that you would add to that, Tamika?
Yes. I always tell people, mention it to your primary care doctor, because a lot of times, when it's insurance based, they want referrals and things of that nature. I always just tell people be mindful of how they word things with their primary cares, because from my experience, I had suffered through a miscarriage. And I went in there and I answered all the questions for them, and they gave me Zoloft. They didn't even give me a referral to, a therapist or any of that. And it's like, hey, y'all just gave me this prescription. I've never been on medication before. I don't need medication. I'm grieving right now. So it was crazy. And, even now I'm mindful of talking to my primary cares about it, because the first thing is like, they'll try to prescribe you some medication. And it's like, medication isn't always the answer. I'm not knocking it, because, it is needed for some people. But if you're just struggling, like with everyday stressors and things of that nature, and you just really want to be able to talk to someone, then I do recommend, briefly mention it to your primary care in that manner. But for me, I know the way I got my therapy, it was kind of in an unconventional manner. So I will tell people that if the opportunity does come for you, and one of the most, unrealistic ways, I would still say take advantage of it. Mine came from, and I'm transparent again, I wanted to pursue a restraining order against someone that, I was a victim for domestic violence with, and I couldn't get the restraining order, but they gave me like this intake form, and some of the questions were asking me like about different resources that I could use, like money management or shelter and things of that nature. And I didn't need any of those, but they ended up having counseling on there, and something in me clicked. And it was in that moment that I was like, I want to take advantage of this. So it ended up being free for me, and I was getting it for 3 years, and I developed a really great relationship with this person. So it came in an unconventional way for me, but I did take advantage of it when it came. So be on the lookout for those ways too, because offers for therapy can pop up in some of the most craziest ways.
That reminds me of perhaps another way. Like you said, Tamika, yours was unconventional, but what stood out still from that is just being able to, I guess, be able to express and to trusted people, like, hey, I'm dealing with this, and maybe even by word of mouth, and speaking to those trusted, that friend, family member, or whomever that person may be, and never knowing that that person may be able to offer some type of referral or connect you with someone who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So yeah, I think being able to still, be honest and comfortable with being able to share with someone that you're struggling and you might be interested in seeking counseling, and sharing that with a trusted person. So thank you for that. And so with that, in terms of starting the process and finding a therapist for someone who determines that therapy is right for them, what about the person who may think that therapy is not right and may be in need of something else? What else is out there in addition to therapy that could support people with addressing mental health challenges? Are there some other types of supports out there aside from therapy?
So outside of feeling like, if the person is feeling like, it's too much of a clinical setting, finding some support groups or some events that caters to the symptom that they might be experiencing, engaging in some activities. There are different forms of therapy that people have certifications in, such as like art therapy. For kids, there's play therapy. So doing something that you might enjoy, that might also cater to something that you might be experiencing.
That's really good insight. That was very helpful, even for me to hear and remember that there, like you said, there are a lot of different specialized groups of people who are trained in other forms of therapy, like art therapy. Definitely the support groups. Thank you for mentioning that. And even the support groups, like you were mentioning, can be really tailored, like you said, to whatever the symptom or the challenge that they may be dealing with. That's really good information. Thank you, Monique. What about you, Tamika? What are you aware of?
Yes, definitely, like Monique said, with like those peer support groups and things of that nature. I know some other things that I've been seeing. Like I know in the East End, like Peter Paul, they do like mental health days where it's, almost like a peer support group, but everybody just comes in and there's some activity being done. Maybe like I know one time we did like a vision board or something like that. But in the process of us doing that, we were talking about some mental health, issues that some of us were facing. So they try to incorporate different activities, like Monique was saying, into, just having casual conversations about it for people who don't want to. And I know I found out weird stuff from watching TV. And I like the Big Bang Theory, and I end up seeing something on there about sensory deprivation. Tank, and I wanted to look it up because I've seen it and I was like, I wonder exactly what that is. And when I looked it up, it was just basically shutting out all of the outside, like cutting off all of the sensory, like the seeing and the hearing and things of that nature. And you're laying back and you control, I think they say you control the music, you control what you're seeing. And it's like, I think they said for 45 minutes or so, but it was just amazing that it's stuff out here like that. So I can only imagine some of the other stuff that's out here.
Absolutely. That makes me want to ask Monique another question. Um, I've been learning more about or hearing more about like coaching, right? We know coaching is not a new thing, but I've even been learning more about how maybe even therapists who have their clinical practice may even be branching out into offering coaching. Can you offer maybe a little bit of insight to how those two differ, and how coaching, what coaching does for people as opposed to, like you said, the clinical setting?
And so with therapy, it's going to be more of that clinical piece, using those evidence-based modalities and trying to navigate mostly like traumas, those symptoms of depression and anxiety. With coaching, it can be more specific to a situation that's happening presently. And an example would be, if someone is experiencing symptoms of anxiety or stress related to a job, a way to coach them through those emotions related to a job. Or if there is not necessarily a crisis, but something happening in life, and they just want to focus on that issue, like a relationship. I'm going through a bad breakup, how to coach me through a relationship, maybe some effective communication skills, how to manage that relationship. And so it's more specific to a certain thing rather than trying to explore childhood traumas and any other symptoms of depression and anxiety, those unwanted thoughts that you can't seem to navigate on your own. That will be more of the clinical piece. But if you're trying to navigate a career choice, a life coach might be good for you in those instances where you went to school for this, you have this debt that you have to pay back, but you want to change your career. That might feel like a crisis for you. And so you may just need to see a life coach to help you navigate some skill assets, what's going on in your career at the moment, and what you may want to do if you were to transition, what that may look like for you.
Thank you so much. I am learning so much from this conversation today, and I hope that everyone who's tuning in to this conversation is learning just as much as I am. I'm just so grateful to be able to be part of this conversation. I know that we are coming to the end of this conversation, but I just want to open it back up to, again, you, Monique, and Tamika, maybe just to offer some final thoughts or words about, advocating for therapy, why therapy, and just any last final words that you feel led to share with our audience today.
Okay. You guys, I appreciate you guys having your transparent moments. And I will slide a little bit into that transparency where when it comes to therapy, I am an advocate, not only because this is my career field, but because it's truly effective and it's truly helpful. I have tons of family members that come to me. Of course, I talk to them, I give them advice, but I let them know, I'm operating from a place of that's not unbiased because I know you, I have these feelings for you. And not to say that we as professionals don't care about our patients, but it's a feeling that, I don't include when I'm talking to an individual trying to help them navigate, whereas a family member, I know everything about you. And so if you are withholding information or if you aren't sharing what I need to know, as a family member, then it's easier for me to give you just my personal advice. Whereas in a clinical setting, I only know what you give me and I can only help you based on what you give me and use my skills that way. And so I say that to say, even as a therapist, I personally haven't had any individual counseling, but I did do a life transition, which was recently getting married. And so that's a new phase for me that I was not, I didn't have any idea of what it was going to look like. So seeking a marriage counselor, marriage and family therapist, was very helpful to navigate some of those things that come with being in a marriage. Something that my mom couldn't share with me, something that somebody who was 15 years plus married couldn't share with me, somebody who was divorced couldn't share with me. This therapist was able to give me skills and tools based on her training that really helped me get to a place where I was prepared and ready to enter this next point in my life. Family and friends are giving their experience, and that's not what I need, because my experience does not look like my best friend's experience who got married. But this therapist is not going to give me her experience. She's going to give me her expertise on how to navigate a marriage and give me some tools to utilize within this new journey that I'm embarking.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for adding in the piece about how, we may have family and friends that come to us, right? And they, because they know you're a therapist and they know you have the skills and, the training, but like you said, your goal, like coming to therapy, is part of that is to remain unbiased, and you have to be able to still maintain that boundary and share with them, like, hey, I'll give you my advice, I love you, but it's going to probably be better if you speak to someone else, another therapist. And sometimes that may be hard to hear because they know they have access to you, but you have to maintain those boundaries. And I love how you use that information to even offer your own experience with knowing you went through a life transition and you couldn't rely on your own family and friends to get what you felt like you truly needed, and how it was different going to that trained, licensed marriage and family therapist who had the expertise and not just experience. I think that is so key to lift up, and I really truly appreciate you for sharing that. Tamika, any final thoughts, final words? What do you want to leave with the people today?
For me, I have to. The first one is, I always tell people, to do what's best for them. And to piggyback off of what Monique is saying, I do advocate for therapy. As I stated earlier, it may not be for everyone, but there are a vast amounts of different forms of it. So maybe sitting and talking to someone isn't for you, but there may be another form of therapy that'll work for you. So I would tell people to explore their options. But for me, like Monique was saying, me just getting to a point where I was tired. of just making those same decisions, but I don't understand why. Like, it has to be a reason why. And like she was saying, mom can't tell me why I'm making these decisions. Dad can't tell me why. They can give me their opinions on why they think I'm making these decisions, but I have to unpack my experiences. The way I'm feeling about the experience may not be the way my sister or my brother or my mom felt about this experience. So for me, I had a lot of unresolved childhood feelings for certain situations, um, feeling like I didn't get treated the way I wanted to or should have at the same time. But she helped me to understand that, you know, my mom and my dad did the best that they could by me. And, you know, when I sit back and think on it, I was truly blessed. Um, it's helped me to have a better relationship with my parents and my siblings. And she also helped me to understand different ways about myself, like understanding that I'm quick to shut down. And I'm thinking it's a good thing because I'm avoiding conflict, but she helped me to understand that that's not necessarily, you know, healthy. I was willing to end, you know, years of relationships because of a disagreement, because I can't deal with conflict. I didn't have conflict resolution skills. So it was like, okay, that's how you feel. Bye. So it's like I was either I'm all in or I'm all out. It ain't no in between with me. And she helped me to create some sort of balance and things of that nature. So it definitely helped me understand a lot about myself. And when I say I'm the most happiest, the most at peace, I know how to set boundaries now. I learned that no is a full sentence. I learned a lot of stuff. I did learn that it's okay to put myself first. I learned a lot of stuff from my therapist, and I'm forever grateful to her. Like you said earlier, Olivia, I be trying to make up stuff in my head as an excuse so I can go back to see her. But she prepared me um, with a lot of good coping skills. So now when things happen in my life, I'm able to say, okay, I need a minute. I need to detach. Hey, I may need to take some time off. Hey, my kids don't come in my room. You know, I just want to be. So she helped me with all of that stuff. So I would say if anybody is struggling with any of the things that I talked about or your own struggles, I definitely advocate for therapy.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Monique. I appreciate you, Tamika. This has been a wonderful conversation. It's been such a wonderful learning experience. And I just truly hope that those of you who are tuning in and watching, that you truly feel encouraged, that you feel empowered, that you feel encouraged to ask more questions, to continue exploring and seeing how therapy can benefit you in all of these great ways that have been described so far, but remembering that it is work, right? And that work is something that you're responsible for, and you got to be ready for it. But it will probably be one of the best decisions that you could ever make and do for yourself, to choose to get that type of support. I am thankful that you invited me, Tamika, to moderate this conversation. I truly enjoyed it, and ditto everything that you all said. As a therapist too, I am team therapy and will vouch for it all day, every day. And so with that said, I turn it back over to you, Tamika, to close us out.
Well, thank you both again. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank you again, Olivia and Monique, for being a part of this conversation today. And thank you for all that you continue to do in your personal and professional lives. And I thank you to everyone for tuning in. We hope you found this conversation informative and empowering. Tonight's conversation concludes this series. We will be back soon for our next series with more engaging and empowering topics. If you missed any of the previous conversations or want to watch them again, be sure to visit Greater Richmond SCAN's Facebook page and YouTube page. Take care, and we look forward to staying connected with you.